DC Comics probably has some of the most iconic and deep rivalries in all of comicdom, and we're going to talk about them. I'm Adam Andrews, the Top 10 Nerd, and this is the Top 10 Biggest DC Comics Rivalries. Let me know in the comments, without naming any names, who was your childhood rival if you had one? For me, it was this kid who lived like 2 doors down from me, and he would just constantly try to one-up me whenever we would play games. I hated that guy. But also not a lot, he was cool. Doesn't matter. Number 10, Batman and Green Lanterns. I don't know about you guys, but I have always sort of loved how Batman and various different Green Lanterns just kind of never get along. Actually, he has this weird thing against Green Arrow as well. I'm thinking maybe Bruce just hates the color green in general. No, it usually has more to do with the attitudes and personalities of the individuals themselves. So, for example, Batman and Guy Gardner had a pretty obvious disdain for each other when they were both part of Justice League International, and it eventually led to Batman straight up punching the lights out of Guy Gardner. Now, to be fair, no one likes Guy Gardner, he's just kind of the worst. Even the rest of the Justice League International were like, yeah, that guy needs to shut up. And they all left for their mission after Batman knocked him out, just leaving him laying there on the floor. There was also the time Hal Jordan came back to life after the little parallax thing happened, and Batman did not trust this guy one bit. Batman kept getting in the way of Hal, who was trying to actually go and defeat Parallax properly. In this case, it was Hal who did the punching, and Batman kinda deserved it, but he still got his comeuppance for that one. Also, when the Justice League came together for the first time in the newer continuities, I think after New 52, Batman was just like a little sneaky prankster to Hal and stole the power ring off him just to be like, I'm better than you. It's kind of hilarious. Batman has also scolded Green Lantern Simon Baz for carrying a Blam Blam, and he's had shouting matches and beat the snot out of Green Arrow for speaking up against Batman. It's a bit of a lighter rivalry, but I swear he's got something against the color green. I think it's a fact. Number 9, Aquaman and Black Manta. While Aquaman has 2 major villains with Ocean Master and Black Manta, the latter of the two just goes the extra sadistic step with this villainy. Black Manta is a man who will go into and come out of retirement based on whether Aquaman is around or not, and the rivalry has just gotten more and more personal for them both over the years. In fact, it kind of rivals all other rivalries, but it is Aquaman, and as much as we all love Jason Momoa, Aquaman, it just ain't that cool, man. He just ain't that cool. He has been, I don't deny it, and the Aquaman stans are going to come at me for this one, but if you like him, let me know in the comments and give me 3 reasons why that don't stem from the fact that everybody hates on him. But back to the point, Aquaman was convinced that Black Manta was responsible for the passing of Aquaman's dad. And he very well might have been, but Arthur's quest for vengeance on that one brought about the accidental end of Manta's dad, so of course Manta needed his revenge, and so he pitted Aquaman against Aqualad by trapping Arthur's wee bab in a bubble of air, causing it to suffocate if the Aqua allies didn't duke it out. And even though they totally did duke it out, it didn't stop anything. And then, even later on, Aquaman even took on Manta's son as a protege, which is like a huge insult to the villain who is arguably your #1 rival. That part was actually kind of cool. I'll give Aquaman that one. That one thing that you did was kind of cool. Also when you had the hook for your arm, that was cool too. Number 8, Black Lightning and Tobias Whale. Black Lightning simply does not get enough love, but his comics and even the show are actually pretty cool. His main rival, Tobias Whale, was the leader of the gang called the 100, and Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning, decided that he was going to become pretty outspoken against this group, which prompted Whale to take out one of Pierce's students. This is what created Black Lightning in the first place, but it wasn't the only beef the two shared. Pretty much like Aquaman, Whale had a large hand in the passing of Pierce's dad. After a while, the rivalry would actually travel over to Gotham City, where Tobias decided to try and establish himself there, and he and his gang were a bit too much for Black Lightning, who had to call on Superman for help, which I also think is kind of lame. He could have definitely handled it on his own. But I mean, where Black Lightning called on Superman, there was a time that Tobias called on a demonic entity, so I mean, tit for tat, I guess. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like on this video if you like it. Your support really helps us out. Also, we have another video that goes over some of Marvel's biggest rivalries as well, so definitely check that out. But in at number 7 is Deathstroke and the Teen Titans. If you have watched the animated Teen Titans series, then you know their number one most persistent villain is Deathstroke Slade Wilson. His cunning, intense, immoral way of completing his missions have made him incredibly hard to bring down, even compared to other massive threats the Titans face. But over time, guess what? Yes, that's right, it became hella personal. Deathstroke's son, Ravager, had his life ruined after Starfire crashed into his apartment, and then Ravager and Deathstroke fought the Titans together until Ravager passed away in his own dad's arms, which then compounded Deathstroke's hate for the Titans since he blamed them for it. And then we have the massive can of worms known as the Judas Contract. Here, the Titans welcome a new member onto the team who ends up being Rose Wilson, the daughter of Slade. She goes and betrays the team and takes up the Ravager moniker after her brother, and that also ended not very well. It's just a whole whack of hate composed in one person. Deathstroke. I'm talking about Deathstroke. Number 6, Superman and Brainiac. Finally, a rivalry that isn't predominantly fueled by personal tragedy. No, in this instance, the rivalry is just so good because it brings out a whole other side of the Man of Steel, his intelligent side. Whenever Superman goes up against Brainiac, his incredible strength begins to fall at the wayside. Brainiac has even beaten the Man of Steel a few times, and what's interesting is that Brainiac is actually the one here who has made a bunch of personal blows on the Man of Steel. Usually it's a bit more fair with heroes also making a few mistakes, but because Superman is DC's golden boy, we can't have him messing up too much now, can we? Or if he does, it had better be in an alternate storyline.
Brainiac shrank Kandor and Krypton and carried them around as part of his collection.
Another time Brainiac had Superman distracted, which opened the door for him to get at Jonathan Kent. Superman has teamed up with General Zod against Brainiac. It goes that far sometimes, but my absolute favorite Brainiac moment is probably one of his kind of smaller ones. It's actually in Superman Red Sun, but I'll let you check that out for yourself because I'm moving on. To number 5, Flash and Eobard Thawne. Things are definitely real when you will travel through time to not only fight your rival, but then travel through time again to change their entire reality. What's really weird here is that Eobard Thawne was actually a huge fan of the Flash, but being from the future, and because time just be like that sometimes, he surprisingly learned that the Flash's greatest villain, Reverse Flash, was Eobard Thawne himself, and then he made sure that this came to pass, kind of like a weird manifest destiny thing. He got powers similar to the Flash, went back in time, and worked alongside Wally West, pretending to be the Flash himself, Barry Allen. Thawne claims responsibility for taking down the Flash family. He destroyed Wally West's life, and probably the most pivotal Flash story, Flashpoint, involved Thawne and Barry battling through time, with Barry attempting to stop Thawne from taking the life of Nora Allen, Barry's mom, which caused a whole different reality to form, and Thawne observed the whole thing, mocking Barry pretty much the whole time. Eobard Thawne found out he was supposed to be a villain, and so he decided he was going to go extremely hard with that and be the most dastardly devil you ever did see. Number 4, Sinestra and Hal Jordan. Sinestra has a serious case of the jealousy. Throughout, Sinestra was considered to be the absolute best of the best that the Green Lantern Corps had to offer, and he was proud of that fact. He even trained the unlikely Hal Jordan to become a Green Lantern, but then Hal went and became the greatest Green Lantern, and that inspired no kindness from little old Sinestra. Nuh-uh-uh. Sinestra hated Hal to a degree. There was also this whole thing of opposing morals. Sinestra held a point that fear and deadly force were the best ways to improve not only the world, but the universe. And Hal helped Sinestra's own planet turn against him. And then Sinestra was kicked out of the Green Lantern Corps. Instead, he literally forged the Yellow Power Ring and created the Yellow Lantern Corps itself, aka the Sinestra Corps. They have had some pretty damn intense battles, and Sinestra was pretty instrumental in that whole little parallax thing that we've talked about before. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Sinestra is also incredibly good at being a huge jerk to Hal, but all while being incredibly entertaining to read. Like, I'm definitely a fan of Sinestra over Hal Jordan, and I'm not afraid to say that. Number 3, Shazam and Black Adam. If you think about it, the feud between these two magic powerhouses is probably the longest in the Earth's history. It goes all the way back to ancient Egypt, and the fun part here is that while Black Adam has done some truly horrible and villainous things, he's not really considered to be as much of a villain as some of the other villains who are on this list. He has still massacred an entire country for no reason, but yeah, definitely an anti-hero, for sure. Black Adam fights for the oppressed and is a champion for his people, but he will use any means necessary to do that. When he became the champion of the wizard Shazam, Black Adam's methods caused the wizard to trap the champion in an amulet. Now, it took centuries for the wizard to choose a new champion, and that was Billy Batson. This didn't happen though until a man would betray and end the lives of Billy's parents so that he could reawaken Black Adam. So now, the wizard's old violent champion and his new heroic one are on Earth at the same time, and Black Adam ain't too happy about that, going to incredibly sadistic lengths to try and stop Billy, who is one of the few characters that can actually oppose and stop Black Adam at all. And he has on multiple occasions, just growing the hatred between the two of them. Coming in at number 2, Superman and Lex Luthor. Let's be honest, with only 2 spots left on this list, most people knew what was coming here. While Brainiac is an incredibly great villain for Superman, challenging the Man of Steel with his intelligence more than even this incredibly intelligent Lex Luthor can, Lex has a burning, unsated hatred for Superman, vast amounts of wealth, and an understanding of people's base instincts that allow him to top pretty much everyone else in Superman's rogues gallery. What's interesting is that he didn't start that way. He didn't hate Superman so intensely at first, but after years and years and years of having his plans specifically thwarted by Superman himself, he really just became the #1 thing that infuriated Lex beyond belief. The story, How Much Can One Man Hate, is actually a really good display of why Luthor absolutely abhors Kal-El. The story showed that Luthor's hatred for Superman was kind of born out of the praise and admiration that the Kryptonian received without ever needing to work really that hard for it. Of course, Lex orchestrated the events that took place in the Death of Superman story, with Lex taking down his arch-nemesis. Additionally, All-Star Superman saw their rivalry come to an end with Superman being taken off the board yet again by Lex Luthor's schemes. Lex himself is probably one of the best villains in comic book history, but I think a lot of us would have a hard time saying that when we know about the villain of the #1 spot. And in #1, yeah, you probably guessed it, it's Batman and the Joker. These two are almost complete polar opposites. One stands for order, the other for chaos. One uses fear as a weapon against injustice, while the other turns laughter into the scariest thing you can possibly imagine. Batman is fueled by an idea, and the Joker has, well, basically no motivation at all, or that motivation changes depending on how he feels. Batman vows to preserve life while beating criminals to a pulp and leaving them in hospital beds, while the Joker almost always just leaves people without the ability to take another breath. This all started way back in 1951 when DC first introduced the Joker in The Man Behind the Red Hood. Before even becoming the Clown Prince of Crime, this unnamed man was on the run from Batman and leapt into a vat of acid, creating the Joker in the first place. So, honestly, Batman himself kinda created the Joker, like indirectly. There are some truly pivotal epic stories in DC Comics that involve this rivalry. The Killing Joke, The White Knight, The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Endgame, A Death in the Family, Death of the Family, Joker's 5-Way Revenge, 3 Jokers, Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on a Serious Earth. All of them are highly recommended and show this rivalry at its peak. Okay, that's all the time I've got. Thanks so much for watching Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam Andrews, and I'll catch you all next time. Peace out, nerds.